All right, so today we move on with our class on sustainable management strategies. And it is very important in order to develop the strategy for your company on its path to sustainability. It's really important to understand its environmental impact. And each environmental impact can be positive or negative. And sometimes while creating positive impact, we accidentally can cause negative results. So these are called environmental trade-offs. And it is really important to understand the full picture, full scale of the environmental impact in order to make sure that we strategically choose the right decisions. So the tool that is actually used for calculating environmental trade-offs is called the life cycle assessment. It is quite comprehensive, and within this class, we won't use the tool, but we will know a little bit of its history, how it is used, and why it is important really to do calculations and not just assume if my product is sustainable, or for example, when we say eco-friendly technologies or a green product, like what it really means. So just to remind you that all the materials are available on this platform. I hope that by now everyone is already enrolled because the first test was also there. You will also have future tests, and if you are not enrolled or have any problems, please text me. Otherwise, the results of the first test were excellent. The average score is 19 out of 20 maximum. Next week, you will have another test that will be based on today's lecture. It will be about life cycle assessment and about the environmental trade-offs. And then you will have another test and written task before the final exam. And the final exam will be online, which will be a compilation of the previous tests. Not all the questions will be included, but basically everything that you will already know by that time. And it will also include a short reflection essay. And we have a question, please.
Yes, teacher, I am not in the group.
Okay.
I don't know how to join.
We have the chat also in your personal cabinet, and you have the web link in the chat.
Yes, exactly. The group chat. I'm not.
Yes.
I am not in any group chat.
How come? Why is it only now?
Maybe because I joined late or something.
Yes, I think you did. So please write me personal email. You see in the left corner, markelova.phd.
Okay.
Write your full name, your email that is registered at Samara University. I will enroll you both in the chat and in the platform, and you will need to take the first test based on the 2 previous lectures.
I took the test. Teacher Blinova enrolled me, but I'm not yet in the group chat.
Okay, so you are at the platform already, so
yes.
There is no problems. You don't need to have group chat.
Okay.
Because in group chat, we only write that we have problems accessing the platform. So basically, you don't really need it.
Okay, then.
I can enroll you also in the group chat, but we don't really write there much. Most importantly is the platform, because the materials are there and the tests are there. And if you already went through the test number 1, it means you're in time. No problems.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So today we will talk about life cycle assessment, which is the most comprehensive tool for environmental calculations. And as we already were covering the Sustainable Development Goals, they have 3 pillars: economic, social, and environmental. And even though they are interconnected, we generally can say that there are 5 categories of environmental indicators in the Sustainable Development Goals. such as climate change, water quality underwater, or the terrestrial systems. We also discussed the planetary boundaries concept, where you learn that there are already more details on the environmental indicators, up to 13. And moving forward, today we will see the life cycle assessment. And this is the most comprehensive. It includes from 30 to 60 environmental indicators. So it is very, very precise. And it actually requires a lot of information to understand all the interrelations. That's why it's normally performed by experts and using the software programs. So it's not that easy as to calculate carbon footprint. Normally, if your company wants to claim that your product is environmental friendly or a green product, you will need to hire an expert who will perform the life cycle assessment. It may take up to 1 year because it requires the monitoring data and a lot of information about not only your product, but about entire life cycle, starting from the raw material extraction, manufacturing, transport, retail use, disposal, and if possible, recycling. So this is indeed covers not just the production or the use like we normally think about, but it actually includes all the life cycle stages. So for example, when we speak about environmental friendly technologies like solar panels, they tend to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions during the production phase, during the electricity production. But what do you think if we take a look at the account, all the stages to actually produce those panels and also recycle them? Do you think there could be any environmental burdens or any environmental negative impact? You can turn on your mic and share what you know about solar panels.
I think during the manufacturing process, they use, I'm sure, the machines that use fuel or machines that use fuel, which later also affect the environment. So, yeah.
True. Even though during the electricity production stage itself, there is no fuel used, but you're right. During the manufacturing, it is heavy industry. So it requires actually quite high demand of electricity. Any other thoughts? What could be other resources are used or damaged in the entire life cycle of the solar panels? Well, most common, there are two things that come to mind. First is that in order to produce the solar films, you need the rare earth metals. Not always, it depends on the design, but when you do need to mine and extract from the lithosphere the rare earth metals, it is actually creates a large impact to the water quality around the mining site. So everything what relates with the mining will be related to the solar panel use itself. And the second factor is it depends where we install the solar panels. Sometimes there can be roof mounted, which are the best solution, because by this you don't take the land that otherwise can be used for either forest or for agriculture or for other purposes. Sometimes we see in China the large solar plants, they are being installed in the forest. So they have to cut the forest in order to install this environmental friendly technology. So it has impact on the biodiversity of the local flora and fauna. And those consequences are called environmental trade-offs, and they are not easy to understand or calculate, but it's possible to do thanks to life cycle assessment. So there are 13 major impact categories that are being calculated in the life cycle assessment. They include climate change, the most famous, eutrophication. Does anyone knows what is eutrophication? Anyone? Eutrophication? Well, the eutrophication is the worsened quality of water in the lakes, rivers, or ocean. It is caused by the excess of nutrients, too much of phosphorus and nitrogen from the agricultural fields. When it ends up in the water, it causes extensive growth of algae. And this is actually visible as a blue or brown color. Sometimes when you walk by the rivers or lakes, maybe you've seen or even smell when the water is not transparent, but it is heavy green. So this is called eutrophication. The extensive growth of algae consumes all the oxygen from water, which means that fish cannot breathe, and it causes the death of fish and other animals. Another environmental impact that we can actually calculate is land use. So how it is changing. And the same what we discussed for the solar panels. For example, it was a forest and it was removed in order to make some solar panels plant. It is also resource depletion. So it can be resource depletion as forest or mineral resources. Could be acidification, and acidification is also about the water quality. Also, it could be any water such as surface water, rivers, lakes, or ocean, where we have basically too much of acidic gases that are dissolved and they are decreasing the pH. And normally, the change of pH just by 0.1 already destabilizes the immune system and the function of animals. So changes in the acidity or pH can really also kill all flora and fauna. We can also calculate ozone depletion, ecotoxicity, ionizing radiation, photochemical ozone formation, water depletion, and human toxicity. So these are the major impact categories, and within each of them, we have from 30 to 60 environmental indicators. So it is quite detailed, I would say. And by calculating all of these metrics, the company can finally come up to the bigger scale of the sustainability picture and translate the results of the environmental impact in terms of the sustainable development goals. So here, more or less, you can see how the results from the life cycle assessment can be used. These results, they help to take informed decisions. For example, how to design your product. If you're producing the carpets, let's say, you are using the clay, and this clay is most oftentimes is toxic. So it's not toxic when we have it at home, but it is toxic when we produce the carpets or we want to dispose them. So large companies, for example, for carpet productions, when they did life cycle assessment, they found out that the ecotoxicity was very high due to the clay. And they decided to replace the clay to the mechanical attachment that works like, actually it was inspired by nature, by lizards. When they climb the walls, they have small like attachment. So the same mechanism was applied in the carpets, and they completely were able to avoid toxic clay. So this kind of the decisions can be taken during design of the new products or during disposal as well. It allows for transparency and especially to understand the full picture, to balance the trade-offs, because it is unfair when we decide to decrease the carbon dioxide emissions, but at the same time to pollute the water. So life cycle assessment helps us to be transparent about it, and to avoid greenwashing. Greenwashing would mean that you actually make announcement that your technology or product is environmental friendly, but then if you don't run life cycle assessment, you cannot be sure. So running this and actually stating all the factors as they are will help you to avoid the greenwashing problems. And we discussed on the last lecture that the greenwashing is now very, unfortunately, like spread, and companies such as Vera, that is a standard for carbon emissions company in the States, right now is going through the court case for greenwashing. So this can cause the complete shutdown of the company. That's why life cycle assessment is quite important. And here is also example. You don't need to understand it right now. You just see that basically it is possible to connect 3 different systems. One is on the left column, you see the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, number 3 is good health. Then the second column, you see the environmental footprint impact categories from the life cycle assessment. So we have human toxicity, cancer, non-cancer, particulate matter, ozone formation, ionizing radiation. This is everything what can impact the health. And then we see the results from the life cycle assessment, and we see that particulate matter as the blue bar, it is the biggest here. So this would be the biggest concern. And after all, you can also relate these results to the concept of the planetary boundaries. And here you can see that the particulate matter is related to atmospheric aerosol loading, right? So this is quite complex, but this is so far the only way to make sure that you're really moving towards sustainability. So basically, we are combining these 3 concepts, and those are the only ones that are now used to claim that your company is towards sustainable development and employs eco-friendly technologies. So a brief history. What is life cycle assessment? Shortly, it's called LCA. And the first company who attempted to do LCA was Coca-Cola already in 1970s. It was not the same exact tool how we use it nowadays, LCA, but it was first attempt to investigate all the resource consumption, all the fuel consumption, and try to predict the environmental impact. So we can say that it started as the analysis of resources and environmental profile. Then it basically moved to the food directive, because the food was the first most important industry. Then already in 1997, the first ISO standard was developed. And right now it is regulated by 2 ISO standards. And since 2000, the many different softwares became popular. So for example, we can use the software that is called Recipe, Relevance and Impact of Chemicals in Products. It's basically very autonomous, and it makes calculations easy. We can also calculate the product environmental footprint. And this is something that allows you to get the eco labels. You know, when you see the eco labels on the different creams or technologies or products, so you need to do this product environmental footprint. And recently, it's being more developed into the not only environmental, but also social. So now they try to merge 2 of them, and it's called SLCA. So it is a social extension, and it also provides some brief understanding of socio-economic impacts. So 2 major standards that nowadays regulate this tool. We can also do it by using Excel table. Of course, it's possible. It will be just quite complicated, but if we want, we just use these standards And the standard 140/40, it will help us to set the framework. So it won't tell exactly how to calculate, but it will tell you what is important and less important when you decide the boundaries. Because if you imagine the life cycle, for example, of the coffee beans, it starts with the growing the coffee bean, watering it, then collecting, then drying, burning it, and so forth. And sometimes the questions are like, do we need to account for the water of the employees who are working on the field? You know, because you can extend it definitely the life cycle boundaries. So the life cycle standard actually helps to navigate what is important to include and what can be excluded. Because obviously, the way how we decide the scope of the study will define the results. The same product can have twice larger environmental footprint or twice less, depending how many processes we will include. So following the standard, it should be more or less clear, but it's not very detailed. And then the second standard, 140/44, it provides a little bit more details already on actually how to do calculations and how to make sure that your study can be comparable with other studies. So these are two major standards. Normally, when we think of the life cycle assessment, it includes the major stages, but it can depend, of course, on the type of the technology or the product. But we go as far as from the raw material extraction to the material processing, to the product manufacturing, distribution, use, and end of life. And ideally, nowadays, when we already can also do recycle, we can also introduce it into the life cycle assessment calculations. And when we add this recycling part, it actually subtracts the environmental footprint and makes your final results lower. So if it is possible to recycle some parts of your product or technology, this will be deducted from the total footprint, which is beneficial because you're aiming for as low result as possible, and including recycle will lower this result. All right. So who can use or who can benefit from the life cycle assessment? It's basically everyone, starting from the consumers. For example, you would like to choose what to buy, what product you prefer, and you can look for eco labels, and those labels are based on the life cycle assessment. It can be an employees who are actually designing, engineers or manufacturers, and they want to make optimistic decisions for the quality and eco-friendliness of the product. It could be a CEO of the companies who are aiming for long-term strategy, for example, to avoid risks. What if you produce mobile phones and you need some metals like silver for electric conductivity? And what if your country is right now in geopolitical crisis and your supply can be limited? So this all can be calculated, as well as the risks can be predicted by using life cycle assessment. And as well as the government who designing the policies or new regulations can also benefit from the life cycle assessment. That was an example of the plastic bags for groceries, because there was a very famous anti-plastic bags campaign to stop single-use plastic. But then when governments, it was performed in states and also in Denmark, they found out surprising results. So basically, what we need to ask when we think about if my product is environmental or not, where it comes from, how much energy was used, what materials were used, and what will happen when you are done with it. So this already gives a good brainstorming when we are discussing the green technologies. Let's take a look at the results for the t-shirts that were compared, because life cycle is an amazing tool to compare one product over another one. And for example, when a t-shirt is made of the cotton, it can be either like original cotton, or it can be recycled cotton. Recycled cotton could be jeans or any other clothing. And as always, when we start looking at the raw material, in this case, it is the seeds to actually grow the plant. Then we need water and pesticides sometimes, because cotton is very sensitive to disease. And then finally, it's harvesting of cotton. Then it's carding and spinning, weaving. Then it is, we use some dyeing. We use washing and rinsing. So it's again electricity, some chemicals, and water. Then it is transportation, packaging, retail store, and finally it is being sold, let's say, to us. And then it depends how we use it. Life cycle assessment will even calculate the user habits. For example, do I use it by hands or wash it? Or do I wash it in my laundry or the washing machine? What detergents do I use? How often do I wash it? And how long do I wear this t-shirt? So all of this has to be already input data into the life cycle assessment. And so you can see the range of uncertainties, right? Because there is no the same habit for two different people, but those who do calculations, they need to come with some assumptions. And they normally write the list of all the assumptions to make sure, like, we accounted that the person will wear this t-shirt for, let's say, 5 years, washing once a week, and so forth. And it's also up to us to decide what will happen with this t-shirt once it's done. Well, like once we finish, once we don't like it anymore. We either can just throw it away and it will end up at the landfill, or we can actually bring it to the store for recycle, or we can recycle it at home. So all of this is accounted in the life cycle assessment. And here's the results. One of the software that has actually a free version to try. So if any of you will ever need to do some simplified life cycle assessments for your company, you can use the EcoChain. It provides free version. It is a little bit limited, but still okay, because others, they don't provide free versions. And here you can include all the life cycle, like how much cotton was used, electricity, water used, wastewater produced, packaging, bleach, and other impacts. And you can choose what environmental impact you want to see. For example, here on the left, you can see that it's global warming. But you can click on this button and see that you can choose any out of up to 15 environmental impacts. But at least for global warming, which is the climate change, we can see that the source of the cotton itself has the largest impact. If it is recycled cotton, and it is compared to original cotton, which is here called normal, we can see that the carbon footprint for recycled is 10 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalents per one t-shirt, while if it is not recycled, is 12 kilograms carbon dioxide. And the biggest difference comes from the material itself, not from the electricity, not from the wastewater, or not from the chemicals used. So this kind of software provides us very detailed results, and we can always compare products and make strategic decisions. Do you have questions until here? All right. So I mentioned that we have eco labels, and those are listed here are only those that are based on the life cycle assessment, because right now we have all variety of eco labels. Some of them certified, but some of them are not. And those are that certified and that take a full picture. It means full and all life cycle, and it includes energy efficiency, chemical usage, waste reduction, and so forth. Have you seen any of these labels personally when you go shopping or anywhere? Do you even take a look, or do you even care personally when you buy something to see the eco labels?
I think, teacher, once I saw the EU eco label, the European one.
Do you remember what was it, the product?
Not really, but I guess it was some sort of cookies or some stuff like that.
Okay. Well, most famous products are actually food, right? Yeah, because that's started regulating earlier. But maybe from now on you will take a look and just for curiosity, see if you see eco label, or most of the time it's fake labels. There are some beautiful green labels that do not mean anything. They just say eco-friendly, zero waste or whatever, but they're not certified. So this is called greenwashing, when we use green labels to improve the marketing of the products. Unless the LCA was performed, this is called greenwashing. All right. And those who are in Russia, you can look for this number 5, Listok Жизни. This is also one of the certified labels. All right, interesting case was with Lego. Such large companies, even like Legos, who have a team of scientists as 150 engineers and scientists, they decided to become more environmental friendly, and they decided instead of using the virgin plastic made from gas from the oil mining, they decided to recycle and use bottles, plastic bottles. So they call the program Bottles to Bricks. So they spent 6 years, 150 people. They were very excited. They said, we will launch this program and we will make the breakthrough. But then when they did the life cycle assessment, they suddenly shut down in 2023. They said that actually the environmental impact will be higher if we use the plastic bottles because of the different plastic quality and because of the additional electricity needs for additional processing of this kind of waste. So if they would have done the life cycle assessment 6 years ago, they would avoid paying to the at least to this team of 150 people and wasting all their money on the marketing campaigns. So now they're back to the original plan. So basically, the life cycle assessment, what it gives us a full picture. We can see detailed results, which life stage is impacting more to the environment, which is less. So we can see the trade-offs and make real decisions, not just by considering one factor. So this is the key, and we are moving now to the environmental trade-offs because we know that the Sustainable Development Goals, they are interconnected, but they can be interconnected in 2 ways, positive or negative. And normally when the companies are reporting their Sustainable Development Goals, they're only reporting the positive side. And this is called, for example, strong positive connections. When we improve the, for example, life on land, you can see it on the left, on the bottom, the large green circle. The larger the circle, it means the larger the impact. It is connected to the green circle on the top, which is health for human. Of course, it is interdependent because we are breathing the air being filtered through the flora and fauna that we have. So it is interconnected, and the better the ecosystem health, the better the human health. But we can also have the conflicts between the goals. You can see it on the right. When we jeopardize the, let's say, non-sustainable consumption of materials, this is negatively, or let's say from the number 5 on the top, you can see the red circle, which is, this is gender equality. But the next to it, to the right, is the education, number 4. When we do not raise awareness about the responsible consumption, we can cause the resource depletion. So those are negative. And basically, trade-offs can be not only environmental, but also social. But we will look into the environmental. For example, in agriculture nowadays, there is a lot of pesticides. Why they're being used? Just simply because when we use pesticides, we have larger crop production, we have better quality and larger volume. But at the same time, when we use pesticides, they infiltrate into the air and water, and they can cause long-term damage that is almost impossible to recover. So we can think here of the short-term benefits, so that we can have a larger crop production, but the long-term benefits that we don't even know how to solve. For example, about the cars, then there is a mechanism how to reduce the vehicle emissions, and what we can use is called methyl tertiary butyl ether. It is added to gasoline, and it is actually enhancing combustion. And at the same time, it is reducing the emissions up to 50%. So we would think amazing, because if we would care only about the climate change, we would discuss it in the lens of the carbon emissions. But at the same time, there are leakages of these liquids, and they have been detected already in the lakes. And this is quite toxic, and it's not toxic only to the lakes, it's also has potential carcinogenicity for humans as well as animals. So there is a problem that at the one stage we are reducing the carbon emissions, but at the same time we can jeopardize the health. So that only life cycle approach can actually show us by numbers what approach would be better, considering the full picture. If you know any examples related to these car examples, you can share now, because we will have few examples from my side, but I'm also curious to hear if you know some environmental trade-offs from your experience. All right. So, as I mentioned, very famous agendas is to ban all the single plastic, because of the it is problems with the waste, right? Before we go into the details, it's just the general problem that single-use plastic created a lot of waste, and that it ends up in the ocean or the forest. And as a fast decision, it was, let's say, let's use the paper bags or have different cotton bags, but it may have its also environmental trade-offs. Let's talk about a little bit about the bags. What is your personal experience? In your country, was it banned already or not? Or what was the situation with the plastic bags? And what's the major problem?
It's Pascal, by the way. So, and so I can't raise my hand. I don't know how to
No,
do it.
it's okay. You can speak. You already do.
Yeah, I can't remember the year exactly, but plastic bags were really banned in my country. So, like the old bags, so they were seizing them from people who already own the non-biodegradable bags, and they recommended us to use other sources. But at the same time, it wasn't effective because the government didn't produce a straight or an equivalent replacement to the non-biodegradable bags. So it ended up in the chaos because people were like doing some black market and stuff. Like people were still using it, but if they catch it, they were like seize it. The police will seize it, and so it was really difficult because there wasn't a replacement. At the same time, they were insisting that we don't use them. And some people ended up like collecting bribes from the police. Police were bribing people when they catch you with the such bags, you have to pay some money. So it wasn't really effective. Then after some time, I think the product didn't work and everybody went back to using non-biodegradable plastics. It wasn't a success
So it was a
because of
strict regulation, but it was completely ruined.
yeah, it was ruined because there wasn't a replacement, and there was a replacement. It was very expensive. Like people used for
Yeah.
economic, like they sell at very high prices, and not everybody was able to afford it. Yeah, it was really chaos. I think I got involved with the police one time because we have a shop. So we're having non-biodegradable bags. So we're using them at the same time. So the police came to our shop once and they were like, why are we still using these bags? And they had to like confiscate all the bags. When they catch you with the bags, they confiscate them, they seize them in a lot of tons, and they're like, for each ton you're paying this amount of fine. So it was crazy. And at the same time, we had a shop and we couldn't sell because we didn't have non-biodegradable bags. So the project
What
didn't
year
work.
was it? When was it?
I think I was in 8th grade, so I think 2013, I'm sure, yeah, 2013, 2014, if I'm not mistaken, yeah.
Already then, because in Europe
Yeah,
they started banning bags only 5 years ago.
we had it since 2014, 2013.
Wow. And what
But it's
country is it?
Cameroon, Central Africa.
Yeah. All right. Well, there is another problem with the biodegradable bags. They're not that better solution as it may seem, because biodegradable, it does not mean that they degrade when we throw them in the ocean or in the forest. Biodegradable, it means that they need actually for composting not wastewater, but the water waste treatment plants. So it is also needs to go to the waste treatment plants because biodegradation happens only at specific temperature. And normally the lowest temperature that is feasible for process is 40 degrees, but it should be as high as up to 60 degrees. There should be also a specific level of humidity. And if in your region there is no waste treatment plant for specific composting and biodegradable products, there is no environmental benefits of having those biodegradable bags, because when they're just in the water, they do not biodegrade, or when they're just on the lake, they do not. So biodegradability is also very, limited. It has been very promising from the campaigns, but it ended up it's not a very good solution either, because it's also about the social habits. If the bag is biodegradable, but we put it in the trash and it ends up at the landfill under anoxic conditions, normally there is no oxygen on the landfill, it won't biodegrade. So it needs oxygen. So there are many, many factors that actually impact the biodegradability. And sometimes in Europe, we can see the label biodegradable, and then it's written 40 degrees, or only in the composting treatment plant, but never in the nature. So it has its own limitations. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else expect any issues? For example, if we compare plastic bag and replace it by paper bag, what's your thoughts? Pros and cons.
Teacher.
Yes, please.
First of all, in my country, it's not very controllable, the plastic thing, because first, the bags are not paid for. They are free. So people just grab 2, 3 bags and just buy anything. There are some companies who use paper bags, But the thing is, the paper bags are less reusable than the plastic ones. Sometimes you can use the plastic one for 1, 2, 3 times maybe normally, but the paper bag will cut off easily. And for us as individuals, we mainly use like big reusable bags like the green one here for the daily groceries at our home. But for the government, there is nothing official or anything working at the time.
What country is it?
It's Algeria.
Okay, thank you very much. So your point is that in terms of the how many times we can reuse it, the plastic is ended up being more efficient because the paper will be broken very easily. Also, if we come back to these questions, where was it? Yeah, what it is made of. Like when we think of the paper, the question is it the original paper or it is recycled paper? Well, I see some comments in the chat. Please don't use the chat because I don't have time to read it. If you have any comments, please turn your mic and camera and tell us, okay? So yeah, let's think what is made of and what it will happen to. So for example, if it is the paper bag, the key question, is it secondary material? Is it recycled from, I don't know, newspapers or books? Or is it original paper that it actually comes from the high quality tree? And even though it is biodegradable, if you think of the initial life cycle stages of its production, it's obvious that we don't want to jeopardize the forest for a single shopping use, right? And then the question, what will happen with this after? Again, it depends on the our social habits. We define what happens to the product. With the paper, most likely it won't be recycled because most likely it will be leaked with product, and once it is wet, it's impossible to recycle. Or it will be, for example, if we have some oil or just dirty hands, any dirty paper, it's not possible to recycle. So it finally will end up on the landfill, and probably it will be degraded, but it won't be come back to the full cycle of the raw materials. And it's interesting that you mentioned that you use these green tie bags. So it's like non-woven. I think it's some also low density polyethylene bags. And let's see what were the results. This study was performed in the United States in 2015. And they calculated different factors. On the left, you can see they basically did everything: global warming potential, which is climate change, terrestrial acidification, freshwater acidification, and all of these factors. And on the graph on the right, you can see from the left to the right, GWP is global warming potential, right? So if you look at this, the largest environmental impact comes from the green bag. But we always need to think that it's always with regard to the local place and country, because if you have the social habit of reusing it, then they count how many times you can reuse it. Maybe in your country, people are very dedicated and they will reuse it for, let's say, years. In the States, people less care about the bags. They maybe use it once or twice, you know, but this bag takes much more resources to produce rather than one plastic bag, like single use. So it really defines the local culture. And for Americans, this is not the best way because they care less about this. Also, when we think normally, the higher the weight of the product, the more environmental footprint it will have. Because just simply think like the higher the weight, it means more raw materials used, right? The more raw materials, more environmental impact. Also, For transportation, the higher the weight, it means the less product can fit into one truck. And the heavier the weight of the product within the car, the more diesel or the more fuel it needs. So everywhere, it's a simple rule, which is not absolute, but sometimes you can use it. The heavier, the more environmental impact. And the lowest, it is dark red. It is actually the single-use plastic bag. And the paper, either it is 100% recycled, is a violet color, or it is the green color, it is 40% recycled. They're more or less the same in terms of the climate change. But when we look, for example, for the marine eutrophication in the middle, the green color, which is the recycled 40%, well, yeah, here it makes sense. It is a little bit higher than 100% recycled waste. Yes, everywhere. Basically, when we see that 100% recycling reduces the footprint of the paper bag. But everywhere, regardless of the environmental impact, the single-use plastic bag turned out to be more environmental friendly. But it doesn't mean that it's true for any country in every region. It depends what they do at the end of the life cycle. In the States, they most likely will burn it. So it won't be deposited on the landfill. It will be burned for the energy recovery. There are different burning plants, and some of them really toxic that do not capture the emissions, and they're very bad for the population who lives nearby. And in Russia, unfortunately, we have only this kind of burning plants, incineration plants. But in Canada, Japan, Austria, Denmark, some of the United States, they have quite expensive incineration plants that they call from waste to energy. And plastic is a good waste to produce energy because it's polymers. So basically, this is also impacts the results of the life cycle assessment. And my summary from here is that there is no simple answer. What bag is better? Because it depends on the culture, it depends on the raw material resources, and it depends on the what will happen after we finish using it. That's why life cycle assessment has to be performed for each company, for each country, and each town. There is no simple answer. And when we do simple answers, unfortunately, we cause environmental trade-offs that can make environmental situation worse. All right, so what can be done to improve the situation? For example, to reduce the ocean pollution, because the ocean pollution is only the last life cycle stage, right? Which depends kind of a lot on the cultural behavior. Let's discuss, what do you think, what can improve the problem or what can solve the problem? You can maybe discuss something what is already written there, or order your or offer your thoughts.
The only option which can be given is to educate people about, is to educate the masses about this plastic use, on how dangerous it is. How can I put it? Like,
I didn't understand, unfortunately. Could you repeat?
they can only educate the masses.
So, for example, in education, what shall they say?
What they shall say.
How to educate? What shall we do as masses?
Give me a minute. Okay. Like, from my own perspective is what like here in Russia, for example, when it comes to these bottles, these large 5-liter bottles are recyclable, as like they've got a trash can to throw them. So if maybe they can insert such stations where you can throw certain kind of plastics so that they should be recycled, it can be a good move compared to like plastics. There are places like where plastics be flying around, and when it's rain season, I'm sure like my African friends can agree here. Like in Africa, like you see plastics are almost everywhere in some countries, or maybe in the community where you're living. And then when it comes rain season, it drains, as like it blocks the drainages of water. Before you know it, all the places are covered with water. So that's what I'm saying. They can educate the masses on how to throw the plastics. Is almost every plastic is non. I
Okay.
forgot the word. So if they're educated on how to throw them or how to use them for them to
Okay.
be recycled, it could be a good move.
For example, you have the 5-liter bottle and you want to recycle it. What would you do? Do you know where to go?
No, as in like the places where I can throw them, like here, I've seen like trash cans where I can throw 5-liter bottles. Okay, bottles in short, but it's in the hostel, so it's students, just the 5 liters and up.
I don't catch everything, but what I've heard is, again, it's up to you. Someone recycles, but someone put them in trash. But for
Yeah, as like
example, my question is, you are a good citizen and you would like to recycle, but do you know where to go, where to find out this information? So what can be done to actually make it happen?
I'm sure there are, what do they call them, NGOs. You can either create an NGO, but these are government programs should be run by the government to ensure that they don't spend a lot of money on cleaning up the environment rather than educating people.
Well, what I'm trying to say, educating is not enough. We shall have clear indications where to go and how to dispose it, right? Because, for
Yeah,
example, if it is contaminated bottle, it's not going to be recycled. So we need to know rules, but also where to come and what to do. Because, for example, in Russia, the bottles can be recycled, but the cups from the bottles cannot be. So if you put all together, they will throw it away because no one has time to separate it. So, like,
so
yeah,
as a good citizen now, so you go, maybe they can make separate maybe trash cans for bottles and lids so that people, and it will be easy for they should, those places for trashing such kind of paper should be accessible to people, and them they should do their work as a concerned citizen who cares about his environment, will put whatever is supposed to be put.
right. And I see here someone from Russia. Have you seen the collection for bottles, Ivan?
Yeah, I think yes.
Can you comment? Do you have next to your house the station for bottles recycling? And if you bring it there? Can you comment a little bit more? I mean, you can speak if you can. Well, anyway, he's texting, so maybe someone else, if you have personal experience that you know the station for collection of the bottles, let's say, or any other materials, like personal your experience, even if we're good citizens, do we have enough information and the points of location for collection? If anyone can comment from your experience.
Well, I think for my period of stay in Russia, it's a common phenomenon. You have trash can where people throw that, and just beside the normal trash can, I notice people throwing just bottles in it. I usually throw bottles in the normal trash can for waste. And then I notice that others are doing bottles, and it's like they're being collected. So just from seeing others doing the same act, then you learn from them. So not in all homes, yeah, but in most of these company buildings, like company residential areas, you can find an ideal trash can just for bottles. But for the covers, I haven't seen it yet. They just collect the bottles with everything in it.
Okay. All right, so that was about the bottles. And if we think about the bags, what can be done? What can we do is to extend its time of using. So for example, we can make it, for example, here you can see on the photo, it's a small holder for the reusable bag, which makes it easier and nicer for people to have it with you everywhere you go. So makes it positive for client attention. So whenever we like the product, we care about it and we use it longer. And the ideal is to extend the use as long as it's possible. Also, for those who create the shopping bags, they can be encouraged using secondary materials, reused materials, and so forth. And Ivan wrote that next to the street trash cans, we have cages for plastic bottles. Yes, but not everywhere. And you personally separate the plastic bottles? Yes, yeah, I got it that you wrote it, yes. All right, so sometimes it is hard to compare actual habits of the citizens and put it into numbers in the life cycle assessment. But that's what has been done and it has to be done. Some kind of average behavior is embedded in the program calculations. And of course, these cultural differences will be different between different countries. So that's why the same results as we've seen here, they cannot be used for the other countries because it will be different habits. All right. So now let's talk about electric vehicles. On one hand, they are promoted to reduce the air pollution because of the no emissions from the gasoline or diesel. But at the same time, they need the batteries and it leads to extraction of the lithium, cobalt, other minerals. And as we discussed, any mining activity is causing the biodiversity or habitat destruction and water pollution. So let's talk about electric vehicles, pros and cons, based on the entire full life cycle assessment. What is your experience or what is your knowledge? Okay, Liad?
Yeah, and also, teacher, they need electricity to be charged every day. The electricity is not generated from nothing, also from diesel and stuff like that. So
let's think, for example, if it is Russia, most of the electricity comes from the coal. Well, Russia is not the best example. I don't know. I forgot your country. Sorry, you already mentioned it. Huh?
Algeria.
Yes, Algeria. Do you know the major electricity source in your country?
Same thing, because we are mainly known for minerals like petrol, coal, gas.
Okay. So yes, in this case, if we charge the vehicle from the grid, it's not very environmental sustainable.
Yes.
But for example, in France, most of the electricity comes from the nuclear. And nuclear has the lowest environmental impact, which means it's the best green technology. So there, the pros and cons can be different. The same car produced by, let's say, Tesla, has different environmental impact, whether it's driven in Russia, in Europe, or in Algeria. So again, my conclusion here, there is no one common solution. Electric vehicles will save the world. No, it depends who is driving and where. All right, thank you. And we have a second friend, Leah, Luya.
Yeah, Luya.
Luya.
It's not big difference between the electric vehicle and the oil, because still the electric vehicle, you can recycle the battery, you can recycle the lithium ion, like that. I think is more bad from fuel, from oil.
Okay, so now we are talking already at the post-usage phase, because I am asking you for these exercises to see the life cycle, right? So we talked about the usage when we use electricity, and now it's about recycling. What can be recycled and what cannot be. And there are also pros and cons. So that's how you normally approach. Whenever you see the environmental political decisions, you need to ask what life cycle stage and what are the pros and cons. All right. Any other ideas here with vehicles?
Can I say something?
Sure.
I think another, let's say, cons of electric vehicles is that they will need charging stations, and charging stations you will have to, let's say, find space for this, which maybe you will make a new place which will displace, let's say, the trees that are already there.
Yes. So a new infrastructure, it will require new infrastructure that has to be prepared carefully not to cause deforestation, let's say. Yeah? Yeah, it's a
Yes.
good thought. And a curious fact that by political agenda, the electric vehicles are considered green, no matter who is producing them, no matter where they are being driven, which is for me ridiculous. But if you open the taxonomy, that is the major environmental document against greenwashing, and you find the electric vehicles, the requirements, none. It means no matter what, if you call it electric vehicle, your company considered green, which is very ridiculous because we know that different company has different, even within the same company, let's say Ford, they have two types of electric vehicles and two models will have very different environmental footprint and considering where they're driven and how. And also curious fact that Tesla, since its reputation as environmental friendly, they've never done life cycle assessment calculations. So they just appear to be friendly based on the marketing. And the US government granted them $9 billion over the 5 last years as it's called carbon credits. It's basically virtual money to thank them for their environmental contribution that Tesla actually sold to oil companies. And these carbon credits makes 40% of the Tesla income. So some, yes, ridiculous facts. And for myself, it is dangerous for environment because we have all this sustainability agenda in order to save environment, but at the same time, there is a lot of greenwashing that without performing life cycle assessment, there is a lot of claims that cannot be proven. That's why I'm really happy that we have life cycle assessment, and I'm really happy that nowadays, for example, for eco labels, it is impossible to get them unless you do calculations. But again, for example, the product has been produced in Japan, but was brought to Europe and used in Europe. And if it says on the packaging, it is recyclable, it can be recycled. Once it's brought to Europe, it will really depend if there is a recycling facility for this kind of material in Europe. So all of this is not taken into account, and sometimes greenwashing can be intentional or unintentional when we don't know the fate of our product. And in this case, it's called extended responsibility of the producer. So what you can do is to educate your clients by writing more information on the packages or the product itself, what it is made, what kind of material, and what part of it can be recycled and how. Of course, we cannot guarantee that it will be, but at least it increases the chances that calculations within the life cycle assessment that account that it is recyclable, it means it has the potential, will be true. So there are many, many uncertainties. And still, that's what we are having today. Have you heard about the energy crops used for biofuel? If you have heard, give us some examples how it can be used. Anyone? Well, in general, yes.
Biomass?
Okay, continue. Tell us what they do with biomass.
No, biomass, like to produce energy, to burn them, I guess, and to produce energy from it, or you allow them to decompose somehow. I really don't know how it works, but I've heard about this before. From its decomposition, I guess, energy could be extracted from them.
Somehow, yes. So there are basically two types of energy production from the crops. One is you burn it, but you burn it not open air, you burn it anoxic without air in the pyrolysis machines, and it creates coal. Basically, whatever we are using on the coal power plants, the same coal, but if the original coal is being mined from the lithosphere, the coal can be created from the crops. It's just the condition that it should be burned without the oxygen. So once we create this kind of coal, it's called the biochar. And this biochar can be used as a fuel for furnaces, for anything, just regular coal, but it comes from the waste, green waste. And the second type, how to create the biofuel, is, as you mentioned, is composting. But then we can extract the methane gas that can be converted to biomethane, or we can create the biodiesel. So there are different options how we can create the biofuel, and it's also considered environmental friendly. And there was a study to show how the biofuel creation can actually be as positive as negative. So for example, positive that it can create the employment for local people, depending, for example, it could rehabilitate the land, but at the same time, it can cause the biodiversity loss in this local area. For example, if there was a high biodiversity rich land or high carbon land. So it's, again, there is no simple answer. All the biofuels are good or bad. It depends if we use original crops or we use the waste from the crops or the waste from the forest. And of course, using the byproducts such as green waste is encouraged. But normally when we hear the political agendas on the moving towards sustainable biofuel, they don't necessarily say what kind of biofuel. So this actually can cause also the environmental trade-offs. But now, after this class, I hope you know what questions to ask to really understand its potential impact and what tool you can use to actually calculate the numbers. All right, so to conclude about the environmental trade-offs, it actually helps to increase the awareness of our selections and to understand that they're interconnected, that there is no simple choices. There is always pros and cons, and we need to consider them. Life cycle thinking helps us to take more strategic decisions and on the longer term, more both as a consumer or as a producing facility. And what is important, we can try to design the products that will be helpful for entire ecosystems, not just reducing the emissions, but also make sure that we do not cause toxic water and air. And it gives us transparency. So we don't say it's right or wrong, but we know exactly how much we can impact. So this is the life cycle assessment tool and environmental trade-offs. And this will be the topics for your next test next week. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Well, all right. Then I
Yeah,
hope, yes, yes.
do you know sugarcane?
Yes.